So, Goliath's curse. Sounds pretty dramatic, right? Well, today we're going to dig into a story that's literally thousands of years old, but believe me, it holds a massive lesson for our future.
I mean, think about it. How can these huge, powerful, seemingly untouchable societies just disappear? It's this question that historians have been wrestling with for ages, and honestly, it's probably more important now than it's ever been.
And what's so wild is that the answer isn't just some dusty old history lesson. Nope, buried in all those ruins is a kind of blueprint, a guide that could actually help us build a much more stable, much more resilient world.
So, to start this whole journey, we're heading to a place you probably wouldn't expect. We're going to the American Midwest, about 1,000 years back in time, to hear a story, a real cautionary tale from America's very first city.
Just listen to this. It's a chilling description of what archaeologists found at a place called Cahokia. And it's a gut-punch reminder that these quote-unquote great civilizations we're talking about, a lot of them were built on some really extreme, really brutal stuff.
So, welcome to Cahokia. This place was huge. I'm talking a sprawling city, maybe 15,000 people, with these incredible earthen pyramids that were actually taller than the White House. But here's the crazy part. After hundreds of years of being this dominant power, it was just abandoned. Left behind as a bad memory. There are no epic poems, no heroic legends. It's like people actively tried to forget it ever existed. So what happened?
Okay, so to figure out what happened to Cahokia and a whole bunch of other societies just like it, we need to look at what's called the fragility formula. It's like this hidden flaw, this secret weakness that makes these giant top-down systems just so easy to break. Let's give these societies a name. We'll call them Goliaths, like the giant from the Bible. They're massive, they're domineering, they pretty much rule by force. But just like the giant, they've got a hidden weak spot. And that weakness is the fact that they're built on this massive divide between a tiny little group of rulers at the top and, well, everyone else, the huge population that has to serve them.
When we think about why societies collapse, our minds usually jump to things like a massive drought, right? Or some big climate event. But the evidence, it actually points somewhere else. The real culprit isn't the external shock, it's the internal fragility. It's things like runaway inequality and all the backstabbing and competition between the elites. That stuff makes the whole system so brittle that the moment something goes wrong, boom, it just shatters.
And how fragile are we talking? Well, get this. A huge study looked at 28 of these pre-modern states, and on average, they hit 77% of the absolute maximum level of inequality possible. Just think about that. That's a society where basically all the extra stuff, the food, the resources, it's all held by a tiny group of people. The whole system is just stretched to its absolute breaking point.
Okay, so these giant Goliaths collapse. And that sounds like a total disaster, doesn't it? But what if it wasn't? What if, for most people, it was actually a good thing? Let's take a look at what happens after everything comes crashing down. There's this amazing text from ancient Egypt, written right after their first kingdom fell apart. And it lays out this incredible contrast. The nobles, they were devastated. But the poor, they rejoiced. For them, this wasn't the end of the world, it was freedom. And look, this isn't just something that happened thousands of years ago. Let's jump to 1991. Somalia's central government collapses. The whole world labels it a failed state. But on the ground, for the actual people living there, life got better. Without this corrupt central government breathing down their necks, local, traditional ways of governing just popped up. And these new distributed systems led to better healthcare and less poverty. It's pretty amazing.
So all of this really leads us to one big, powerful question. If these giant, centralized Goliath systems are so fragile and honestly so oppressive for most people, could the answer, the key to a better future, be to do the complete opposite?
And that brings us to this really cool idea. It's about building systems that don't just survive problems, but actually get stronger from them. The concept is called anti-fragility.
Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine a weightlifter. When they lift, they're putting stress on their muscles, right? Creating tiny little tears. That stress is a shock. Now, if the muscle just healed back to normal, that would be resilience. But that's not what happens. It heals back stronger than before. That is anti-fragility. It's a system that's literally designed to get better when things get chaotic.
So how in the world do you build a society like that? Well, it pretty much boils down to three main ideas:
all based on decentralization. First, you have to isolate failures. That way, if one little piece breaks, it doesn't crash the entire system. Second, you build in redundancy and diversity. Have lots of different backups and options instead of just one thing that can fail. And third, you empower people on the ground to react quickly, because they're the ones who actually know what's happening.
And the best part is, this isn't just some abstract theory. This is a real, practical roadmap for building a better world right now. So let's check out what a more distributed future could actually look like for some of our most important systems. Okay, let's start with energy. Our power grid today, it's a total Goliath. You've got a handful of huge power plants, and they're all connected by thousands of miles of really fragile wires. The alternative, the distributed way, we call it energy democracy.
Just picture it. Communities running their own local microgrids, powered by stuff like solar and wind. A big storm comes through and knocks out the main grid? No problem. These little grids can just island themselves, disconnect, and keep the lights on for everyone locally. It's way more efficient. You lose less power over long distances, and best of all, regular families can become prosumers, producing their own energy and even selling the extra back to the grid. It builds wealth and puts control right back in the community.
All right, next up, food. Right now, we rely on these incredibly fragile global supply chains that are shipping our food all over the planet. The distributed solution here is something called food sovereignty.
When we focus on growing food locally, or at least regionally, we're suddenly way less vulnerable when global prices shoot up or a shipping crisis happens. Plus, it encourages farming methods that actually heal the soil instead of destroying it. And of course, it keeps money flowing right there in the local community, which means more jobs and stronger towns built from the ground up.
And last but not least, let's talk about information. It's basically the lifeblood of our world today. Instead of being at the mercy of a few giant internet companies, we can actually build communication networks that are truly resilient.
Think about community-owned mesh networks. There's no single central hub that can fail. If one part goes down, the data just finds another way to get through. This makes them almost impossible to shut down or censor. It lets communities control their own data, protect their privacy, and make sure internet access stays fast and affordable for everybody. It's all about putting the power back where it belongs.
So when you look around, our modern world, with its globalized economy, its handful of giant tech companies, its super fragile supply chains, it's a Goliath. And we've seen throughout history exactly where that road ends. So the real question, for all of us, is this. Can we actually learn from the ghosts of places like Cahokia? Can we take the wisdom we see in these distributed networks and use it to consciously build a future that isn't just about being bigger, but about being stronger, fairer, and genuinely built to last?